Hello, and welcome to Module 4 of Online RSO Training. In this module, we will discuss how to access and spend your funding. To start out, we need a foundational understanding of documentation and payment types. Let's start out talking about documentation. We use a number of terms to describe documents needed to process payment. First is an invoice. An invoice provides a corporation or individual's name and address and an itemization of goods and services and the amount due or owed. A contract is the Center for Leadership and Involvement's engagement agreement. This will specify speaker and performer terms, payment amounts, etc. All contracts must be signed and approved by your RSO advisor. Note that students are not allowed to sign contracts on behalf of the university. We will often ask for a W-9. This is a corporation or individual's form used for tax purposes. Additionally, we will ask for a completed certificate of compliance from the vendor. This is to screen for debarred vendors. In some cases, if you're working with an independent contractor, they will need to fill out a separate questionnaire and provide a client list. Lastly, when we refer to a receipt, this is a printed, itemized list that shows final payment and method of payment for a purchase. Digital links to contracts, W-9s, certificates of compliance, and independent contract paperwork are provided in the Dig Deeper section of this module. Let's discuss payment types. First, there are payments. When we say payments, we mean that we issue a university check. Let's talk about when to use them. If you're going to use them for a simple purchase, as in no services, all you need is an invoice. If you are paying for a rental or service payment to a corporation, you will need an invoice from the company, a W-9, and a certificate of compliance. If you're processing a rental or service payment to an individual, you will need an invoice, W-9, certificate of compliance, independent contractor questionnaire, and a client list. If you're processing an honorarium for a performer or a speaker, you'll need an invoice or contract, a W-9, and a certificate of compliance. If you are issuing any payments to foreign companies or individuals, please speak with our financial operations team before securing those foreign services. There's additional paperwork that needs to be done. The next type of payment is a purchase order. Purchase orders are used to pay for goods and services directly so that you do not need to pay out of pocket. To issue a purchase order, you need a quote or an invoice from the approved vendor. The approved vendor list is provided in the Dig Deeper section of this module. Note that only university-approved vendors may receive purchase orders. Also note that to issue final payment on a purchase order, you will need a final invoice from the vendor. It is a simple 6-step process. To do a purchase order, start by calling your university-approved vendor to discuss your order. State that you are with the University of Chicago and give them your RSO name. Have them fax or email you an invoice or quote. Submit that invoice or quote and blueprint and indicate that you are submitting it as a purchase order. If the paperwork is in order, we will issue a purchase order and send it to the company. At that point, the vendor receives the purchase order and completes your order. To close the process, submit the final invoice through Blueprint so that we may issue final payment to the vendor. Next, let's talk about the reimbursement process. This is one of the most commonly used processes for accessing your funding. There are a few steps to ensuring that things go smoothly. First, check that your purchase will be reimbursable. After that, fill out the reimbursement form via Blueprint and include the required documentation. Let's talk about what expenses are reimbursable. Simple goods such as food, art materials, office supplies, fabric, stamps, photocopying, etc. Tournament entry fees and conference registration fees are also reimbursable. as are personal travel expenses, such as coach airfare, hotel room charges, bus fare, cab fare, tolls, mileage, and rental cars. On the flip side, there are a number of non-reimbursable expenses. These are typically services, which would need to be paid either by check in the payment process or through a purchase order if they are a university-approved vendor. Examples of non-reimbursable expenses include catering, engraving, screen printing, web design, printing, bus charter, audio-visual rental, teaching and instruction, graphic design, t-shirts, lecturing speakers and performers, coaching, editing, producing, duplication of film and CDs, photography, videography, banner making, musical performance, DJ services, and rentals. Note that gift cards and gift certificates are prohibited expenses, and we cannot pay for them by any method. We will be asking for a reimbursement documentation when you submit. This can be a number of things. It may be an original printed receipt that gives an itemized list of what you paid for and how you paid for it. If you're given a printed ticket that does not show the proof of payment, you'll need to submit that printed ticket along with a backup documentation form and a copy of your bank or credit card statement. A copy of the backup documentation form is available in the Dig Deeper section of this module. If you submit a handwritten receipt and paid by credit card or check, you'll need to submit a bank or credit card statement in addition to the handwritten receipt. If you are submitting a handwritten receipt and you paid cash, you'll need to submit the handwritten receipt and a backup documentation form. If you are submitting a reimbursement for something you ordered online, submit the appropriate documentation as outlined above. A simple screenshot or email receipt will normally suffice, along with a packing slip or memo. Some reimbursement tips. Always put the full legal name of the individual being reimbursed and make sure you have their address. Always retain original receipts. When prompted, you will need to turn in your originals to the finance office, not scans or photocopies. Complete the entire purchase form. Note that for food expenses for fewer than 11 people, you must provide the full names of all people who were present. And let us reiterate, please do not pay for any services or rentals per the non-reimbursable expense categories. Now let's walk you through Blueprint so you know how to complete the form. When you log into your RSO's Blueprint page, go to the Finance tab on the left side toolbar. In the upper right hand corner, you will have the option to create a purchase request. This is where you will begin the form. Enter in the subject or title of what it is that you are seeking to pay and the amount that you are requesting. From there, a brief description of what it is that we are paying for or reimbursing will be needed. Under Categories, select the appropriate payment type. This may be a reimbursement, a check payment, or a purchase order. From there, enter in the payee's information, including their full legal name and mailing address, and then fill out the additional information as prompted about your event, including the date, number of people, and activity type. You may also include payee information for contact. In the last step, you'll need to upload your documentation as outlined previously. If you need to add any additional information or reference a previously denied report, enter that in at the bottom and then click Submit Request. That will come through to our financial office, who will be in contact with you should they need anything additional or when they need you to turn in original receipts. You have now reached the end of Module 4. Please take the quiz and then move on to Module 5, which is linked in the Dig Deeper section of this module.